Great, thank you. Welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District on Wednesday, September 15th at 2021, or September 15th, 2021 at 5 p.m. via video conference, as we have been doing. I'm going to read a quick notice to the public. Due to the evolving situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus, so long as state or local public officials have imposed or recommended social distancing measures, Vallecitos Water District will hold future meetings via video conferencing and allow members of the public to observe and address the meeting telephonically or otherwise electronically. During this period of time, Vallecitos Water District will not be making any physical location available for members of the public to observe the meeting and offer public comment. The public is encouraged to watch and participate in the meeting from the safety of their homes. The meeting can be viewed on the agenda page located on the main page of the district's website. Public comments or questions can be submitted to the following email address: publiccomment@vwd.org. All written comments that are received at least 90 minutes before the meeting will be provided to the board, and a record of the receipt of comment will be noted during the meeting. Members of the public viewing the meeting via the Zoom video conferencing platform can express their desire to provide input at the appropriate time by utilizing the raised hand function. Additional instructions for online participation will be posted on the district's website at www.vwd.org/meetings. Great. Director Boyd Hodgson, would you please lead us in tonight's Pledge of Allegiance?
No. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty,
and justice for all. Thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson.
You bet.
I'll go ahead and call a roll call. Director Hernandez.
Here.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Here.
Director Pennick.
Here.
Director Elthart.
Here.
And I'm here as well. Okay, moving right along. I will entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda, please.
Move to approve Hernandez.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Pennick.
Thank you. We have a motion by Hernandez, or Director Hernandez, and a second by Director Pennick. Conduct another roll call vote. Director Elthart.
Yes.
Director Pennick.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to public comment. Do we have any either comments that were provided prior to the meeting or anybody raising their hand currently, Glenn?
Yeah, we did not receive any emails by the deadline, and I do not see anybody from the public wishing to express a comment at this point in time.
Okay, we'll move along. We have a special presentation tonight. You want to go ahead and kind of introduce this to us, Glenn?
Yeah, I'll kick this off. So we want to make a presentation tonight to one of our staff members, Chris Tapia. I don't think Chris is with us tonight, but we're going to recognize him anyway. Chris is the supervisor of our meter services department. He's been with us only less than a year. He joined us in December of last year, and he recently received 2 professional certifications from the American Waterworks Association. He received his backflow prevention assembly general tester certification and his cross connection control program specialist certification. And both of these will improve Chris's ability to oversee the many functions of the meter services department and will align that responsibility where it belongs, which is in meters. For the last 4 years, our operations and maintenance manager, Ed Pedrazzi, has been acting as our cross connection control specialist. So Ed, you are officially now relieved of duty. And Chris, the cross connection control program is now yours. So back to you, President Sanella, and just a kudos to Chris for taking the initiative in less than a year on the job to receive those really important certifications.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing that with us, Glenn. And if Chris happens to see this, just on behalf of the board, thank you for your efforts and being proactive in your development, and all of it benefits both you, but all of our customers as well. And I know everybody appreciates it, so thank you. Okay, moving along. We have the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requests that a particular item or items be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it will be considered separately under action items. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar, please?
Motion to approve, Pinnick?
Thank you, Director Pinnick. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson. We have a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent calendar. Is there any discussions or any items that need to be discussed further? I don't hear or see any. Okay, we'll conduct a roll call vote. Director Elthar,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Pinnick,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. We are just cruising tonight. That concludes the consent calendar. So we will move on to action items and start off with item 2.1, which is a water supply conditions update. Is that going to be Chris?
Yeah, Chris is going to take that report.
Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager Puem. Let me get my screen up. Should be showing. Everybody see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Super. The not a whole lot of changes from the previous month's report. As you'll remember, back in August, the federal government declared the shortage on the Colorado River, mandatory cutbacks for Arizona, Nevada, and Mexico. At this point, California hasn't had any specific cutbacks on the Colorado River. But one of the new items that I wanted to share was all the national forests in California are closed due to the fire danger. The other interesting notes were the California State Water Resources Control Board ordered 1,500 water rights holders to stop diversions from the upper Russian River. And Russian River is 110 miles long and provides a lot of water to the vineyards throughout Sonoma and Mendocino counties. And the State Water Resources Control Board then sent a similar directive to 57 rights holders on the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta watershed. And that's, 3 million acres of farmland there. So big changes for that group. The North Sierra Station, 8th Station Precipitation Index, it's basically what it was back in June, where there really isn't a whole lot there. There was zero measurement in June, on June 1st. Lake Oroville is at 22% capacity, and San Luis Reservoir at 13%. So those are dropping. Colorado River Upper Basin shows that there is 82% precipitation, which sounds okay, but Lake Mead 35% full and Lake Powell 31% full. So not good figures there. 3-month temperature outlook for the San Diego region, the local region, is above normal favored. And then the 3-month precipitation outlook looks about the same. So definitely warmer and probably pretty dry September, October, November. One of the items that's coming forward to the board is the full drought ordinance. And there's notification that has to occur before we implement that ordinance. And then we also produced a video for 15% reduction to help customers understand exactly what they need to do to try and get a 20 gallon per day savings. So, or 50 gallon per day savings. Summer was hot and dry. Snowpack was 0% in June 1st, and dry and warmer conditions throughout the summer and the autumn in the Southwest. And I'll take any questions if there are any.
And if I can maybe add on to Chris before the board asks any questions. Right now, the governor has called for a voluntary 15% cutback And it's looking like that's going to become a mandatory requirement in the near future. That's the way all indications are leading. And I'm particularly concerned that San Diego County may not get any special treatment. We've spent as a county over $3 billion improving our local water supply reliability. And we're concerned that it's going to be a one size fits all at the state level in terms of cutbacks, regardless of whether a particular area like San Diego County has adequate water supplies or not. So we're monitoring the situation, and we'll include those updates with Chris's update every month.
So, Glenn, back in 2014, when we had the last time we had a major drought, the governor back then was Brown, but he took a one size fits all approach, which I think everybody in San Diego would be willing to make that necessary sacrifice to help out our neighbors to the north. But my understanding back then is that we were actually taking treated water that we couldn't use. They wouldn't let us use it, and we were having to put it back into untreated reservoirs, and sometimes just letting it just run out, and either out to the ocean or into streams and stuff. So do you foresee that we might be in another situation like that, where San Diego makes these significant investments and has the water, but is just simply not allowed to use it and has to put it back into the reservoirs versus giving it to customers?
I would say yes to the first part, that we may not be able to take advantage of the significant investment we've made. What we're required or have to do with the water, I don't know right now. It's a little too early to tell. I'd like to think that the state learned from the painful experiences. You hate during a drought to have agencies forced to release water, put treated water into untreated reservoirs and treat it again, or release water. It's not a good situation to be in. And quite frankly, some of the water supplies that San Diego County has can't be redeployed to Northern California. So us taking cuts down here won't help Northern or Central California in most cases. But I realize it's a big state, 58 counties, 38 million people, or whatever there are. It's hard to come up with a plan that pleases everybody. But like I said, we'll be monitoring the state's progress.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, thank you for the update and presentation. I appreciate you taking time to do that. Do any of my colleagues on the board have any questions or comments that they would like to make? I don't see any hands. So again, Chris, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And we're going to move. That is an informational item only. And so we will not have to vote on it. We'll move on to item 2.2, a discussion regarding the redistricting process. And Glenn, I'll turn that over to you to kick us off.
Yeah, I'll intro it real quickly and then turn it over to James. But the board may recall that public agencies with elective offices are required to redraw their political boundaries every decade based on the most recent census data. And with the completion of the most recent census, that time is upon us, so it's time to start acting. Staff did provide an overview on the redistricting process at the September 1st board meeting, and the board requested that staff return with an overall schedule, as well as some additional information on public outreach. So James will walk you through those updates.
Thank you, General Manager Prum. President Snell and members of the board, I'm going to have a brief presentation here. Let me know if anybody has trouble seeing it. The presentation should be up now.
Yeah, we see it.
Great. All right. So this is just a quick overview of the redistricting process. And as General Manager Prum already mentioned, you kind of got this presentation at the last board meeting on September 1st. So what we're really showing here today is really a little bit more definition and a little bit more detail on the process itself, and a little bit better idea of schedule. Really quick, our starting point is going to be the census data. So SANDAG is actually in the process of basically getting the census data and applying it to the different voting districts voting precincts. And we're due, according to SANDAG, to get that data by the end of September. The next portion, and I put this in red because this is the portion that was kind of requested at the last board meeting, is an additional outreach session prior to actually redrawing any boundaries on the division maps. So basically, additional outreach would be conducting public meeting and seeking input from the public. We could do this through an outreach, working with Chris's group, through mailers, social media, through the website, and then having a meeting in which we could gather comments that we could use and consider towards looking at division boundaries. At that point, we can really start on our work product. So at that point, what we've done is we know the main, that we have the census data. We understand, at least from an initial public outreach, what some concerns are, if there are any, and we can start really working at our working on the product. The first product is computer driven. Our GIS system will basically look at the new data, look at the standard basically criteria, and draw a map. Our second work product is for staff to really look at that and start applying, making sure that we're not crossing major roads, we're taking natural barriers like lakes and rivers and major roads into consideration, making sure that the main directors stay within their division boundaries. Some of the basic criteria as we outlined at the September 1st meeting. We also will start taking at that point into any of the outreach comments that we've received, especially ones that don't have any conflicts with any of the normal state or county regulations. The third work product is really where we get the independent consultant involved to really do the same thing, check staff's work, make sure we're complying, check the comments from that we may have received from our public outreach attempt, and verify the map and make any adjustments. At that point, we kind of transition into our recommendations and presentations. So we recommend it to the general manager, make sure that this is with the consultant. We present it to the board, showing basically the comments received, how we're meeting the criteria, of course, with the new census data. And then we conduct a public hearing, and this is required. So at the end of the public hearing, considering all the effects of the public hearing, we move on to adoption. And finally, we have to submit it to the county register of voters by, I believe, April 17th. So what does that look like on a calendar? Well, here's our starting point. So basically in the month of October, we'll be getting, or by October, we'll be getting the data and we'll be starting our basically our work product. Basically in November, we could do an outreach attempt. We could send out basically late October, early November, go through between social media, website, and mailers, start our outreach attempt to reach our customer base and see if there's any communities of interest that want to talk to us and give them opportunities to contact staff directly. Also give them an opportunity and give them the information on when this will be presented to the board so they can formally also contact staff through the board if they don't want to contact staff directly. The work product is ongoing from October to January. By the time we get everything, it's going to take us about a month to put those first maps together. And then obviously the public input session is important. And then last but not least, modifying, taking into consideration all accounts and also working with a consultant. Public hearing, we're looking at the second board meeting in February to have our public hearing to get community inputs. And also this will be an opportunity for any community members who feel that their comments weren't addressed to also come back and provide input. Second public hearing is in second board meeting in March is what we currently plan on. And at that point, assuming that everything goes well, an adoption at the same board meeting. And then of course, submittal by April 17th. So if there's additional work that needs to be done, that gives us one additional board meeting in April to actually address those comments if need be. So this is basically a real simple timeline, but I wanted to give the board an opportunity to take a look at it. When I started working the timeline backwards, there isn't a lot of fluff in the timeline, unfortunately. And really it's that one board meeting in April if we need to push it back from the public hearing for adoption. And that becomes really the only flexibility we have in the schedule. With that, really what we're trying to do is fill in that 2021 to be determined. So we have the 2016 map, which is the current division boundaries. The first map that we're going to show the public and everybody is basically the same exact map, nothing changed, but with the new population numbers from Sandag. At that point, we start our process by getting public input. and start down the process of trying to basically relook at the division boundaries to kind of even out the population. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, James. I'll open it up to my colleagues. Do you have any questions or comments at this time?
The only, oh, go ahead. It looks like Director Boyd Hodgson has something.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thanks, James, for putting this together. That was a really thorough presentation. I appreciated seeing the timeline. I think this makes sense and it tracks very closely to what other organizations are doing. And just sort of for my own edification, and I know that a lot of people have done a lot of work on this and will continue to do a lot of work, but I wonder why it's the case that every agency does this process separately and we don't just sort of go with, a school district, what the school district does, or, and I understand, maybe the school district doesn't overlap exactly, but I'm just wondering if anyone knows the answer to that question, because it is a lot of staff time. It's a lot of just time devoted to this, but I'm just wondering if anyone knows the answer to that.
Director Boyd Hodgson, I know that our boundaries don't line up exactly the same as the city or the county or the school districts, and each voting precinct is a little bit different. So I believe that's probably the main reason, but I wouldn't know if that's the only reason.
Thank you.
Director Pinnick, did you have something?
No, just a clarification. I don't know if it'll affect us, but say upon redistricting and reboundary lines, one of the directors is now in another district or in another division. What happens there?
Actually, I believe one of the rules is you can't have an existing elected member drawn out of their current, but I don't know if that's, I've been told that's a rule. I believe that is, and maybe Council Gilpin could help me out on that one, but I believe that is a rule.
Yeah, you're not unseated due to the change in the boundary up until your re-election period, given the staggered election periods.
Gotcha.
Any other questions, comments? Hey, James, so is there going to be an opportunity for, I know we're going to get a lot of community input, but for the third party consultant who's going to help do this for us, I didn't see anything in there for the board to give them any sort of direction. And is that even appropriate? Is the board not to give direction? Can you kind of educate us a little bit on what that interaction is going to look like or not look like?
Yes, I could at least start that process. So my understanding is there will be a presentation to the board from the consultant, basically right prior to the first public hearing where we get other community input. So if you look back, and I apologize for kind of going back through, right after the work product there's going to be an opportunity where the board is basically presented the information. And I don't believe there's a lot of direction from the board on this process. And I believe that's the way it's done on purpose. But when we talk with other agencies and we talk to people, typically it's a presentation and there's general comments that is seeked out from the board if there's any concerns. And those are taken into consideration just like any other public comment. Okay.
And will the third party consultant present to us multiple options, or will it be this is what they came up with?
Well, ideally they come up with single options unless there's a reason for more than one. And then if there is, they'll present the multiple options. The way, and it doesn't show on any of the maps, the way you can't split a voting precinct up that the county registrar of voters already has. So you're moving blocks at a time. So it really ends up limiting the amount of options because you're not allowed to draw a division boundary through a middle of a voting precinct.
Okay. So essentially we're going to be just kind of massaging the current boundaries, it sounds like.
Hopefully, yeah.
Add 100 people here, take 100 people away from there, that type of thing.
Yeah. Ideally, that's the goal. So once we get the data, and we get the original mapping, we're hoping that the balance is not that far off, and that really minimizes the amount of work for us to produce the initial maps.
Okay, thank you. And thanks again for your hard work on this. Any other comments before we move on? Any comments from the public, Lynn?
Sorry, I was on mute there. No, nobody from the public has expressed a desire to speak.
Okay, so hearing no further discussion, that item was also for information only, and we'll move on to item 2.3, water service shutoff moratorium. Glenn, you want to kick us off again?
Yeah, I'll take that. So back in early 2020, the Vallecitos board made the decision to temporarily suspend shutting off water meters due to a customer's failure to pay their bills. This was done in reaction to the financial impacts anticipated due to COVID-19. And shortly after that, Governor Newsom imposed a statewide moratorium on water shutoffs for failure to pay. That moratorium is scheduled to expire on September 30th of 2021. And unless extended, the expiration of the moratorium would allow water districts to make the decision whether they will shut customers off for failure to pay their bills. And given that tonight's meeting is the last Vallecitos meeting before the planned expiration of the statewide moratorium expiration on shutoffs, we wanted to give the board the opportunity to provide staff direction on how to proceed after September 30th. Just a couple things to think about before the board provides some direction. I think it's very likely that the statewide moratorium may be extended. I'm not aware that it has been yet, but given that the recall effort is behind us, that the governor may be able to focus on that. And that would take the decision out of the board's hands. So if they extend it, say, till December 31st, then water districts could not start shutting people off. Another thing to think about is that staff has applied for reimbursement through the state's arrearages program, which set aside $985 million to help customers who have fallen behind on their water and wastewater bills. So I think we put in a claim or a request for, depending on whether they allow late charges or not, but without late charges, it's about $320,000. And with late charges, it pushes it closer to $400,000. So the decision of whether or not we get the money may help the board decide whether they want to start locking customers off or not. I think we have on the order of 500 or so customers that were eligible for their bills to be included in the arrearages program. Many of those customers have contacted the district and have been put on a payment plan. They would still love to get relief from the overdue amounts, but they're in what I would call good standing, right? They've been in contact with the district. We recently sent out a couple of hundred letters to customers who have not paid their bills, nor have they reached out to the district in response to our repeated outreach to make payment arrangements. The letter basically informed them that the statewide moratorium is set to expire on September 30th. So we were hoping to get their attention, saying we'll no longer have statewide protection. I don't believe the letter went into detail about what the district may do, but we wanted to make sure that they are aware that those statewide protections may no longer be in place. So staff is looking for some direction here, assuming the statewide moratorium expires on September 30th, and that's an assumption. Should staff resume its pre-COVID practices regarding late payments? Or would the board like staff to allow continued water service to those late customers who have committed to a payment plan and remain current on their current payments? Another option, would the board like to continue to hold off on all shutoffs until the payment arrearages program payments are determined and or received by the district? We're thinking that'll be in the January or February timeframe before the state decides how much each district will get and the money's actually transmitted to the state or to the districts. Last option maybe, is there some future date the board would like to establish at tonight's meeting or a subsequent meeting, after which we would resume our normal practices? For example, our board may want to say, hey, regardless of what the state does, we don't want to resume shut off for non-payment until January 1st, for example. I would like to point out that our normal practices are very customer friendly. We take great efforts, even before COVID, to work with our customers, and we try to help them set up payment plans. When we usually suspend the accrual of additional late fees while payments are being made, if they're keeping up with their payment plan. And we've even had cases where people couldn't comply with their original payment plan, and we'll even reschedule that. So it does get a little frustrating when the customers don't even respond to our repeated outreach efforts. So, and last point before I turn it over to you, President Sinella, is even if a customer is shut off, service can be restored very quickly once payment arrangements have been made. And that doesn't mean they have to pay it off in full. But if we shut somebody off and they called us later that day, we would say, hey, we need to work out a payment plan, and we could restore service pretty quickly after that. So with that, we're looking for direction from the board, assuming the moratorium expires on September 30th, because we don't have a meeting between now and then. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, President Sinella.
Thank you, General Manager Broom. I have some thoughts, but I'll open it up to my colleagues first. Is there any comments or questions? Director Hernandez?
Having been in the district for decades, I confirm what the manager has said. During the recession of the early 90s, I lost it all, house, business, everything. And so prior to that, I was in arrears for quite a number of months. And the district, I was able to work out a plan. It was painful, but I worked through it. And I certainly hope we don't consider changing our MO once the moratorium is lifted. I'm reminded of, I'm a Michigan boy, and I'm reminded that that was one of the things that sent Detroit into bankruptcy was people quit paying their bill, and the city kept providing water, and then everybody went, hey, my neighbor's not paying it, and they're going to shut it off, so hell, I'm not going to pay it. So I think if we continue to process in the friendly way that we have, and if it is the moratorium is extended, okay, fine. But if it ends on the 30th, then I think we should go back to our standard shut-off policies.
Okay, thank you, Director Hernandez. Any other comments or questions of staff?
Director Eldertharp has his hand up, President Sinella.
Thank you, Director Eldertharp.
Yeah, I concur with Director Hernandez. I'd like to resume normal business operations, assuming that the moratorium isn't extended. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Eldertharp. Any other directors have any comments at this time? Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. I've voiced my opinion about this a few times, so I'll voice it one more time. We are not out of the weeds with COVID-19, and I do not feel that it is appropriate to cut off an avenue through which people can wash their hands and maintain personal hygiene during the middle of a pandemic. People are struggling. We've lost 25,000 jobs in North County. People are continuing to lose jobs. People are resuming jobs, but people continue to lose jobs. So I would like to, I would encourage our board to vote to extend it or at least revisit this at the end of the year or during or when the arrearages come through. We have reserves. This is a great reason to use those reserves to help our community, to help those that really need it in the community. And I would encourage us to vote to not resume normal business operations on Lockwater. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson. And anybody else? Okay. I tend to kind of agree with Director Boyd Hodgson. I know that this board implemented the no shut off policy even before the state did at the beginning of COVID. And I thought that was the right thing to do then. And so I'm having a hard time, not under the same kind of thought process, not thinking it's the right thing to do now. I do understand Director Hernandez's point that we can't do it forever, and that there will be some people that may choose to take advantage of of the policy if we were to do it. But I think right now, with such a fluid situation, and there's different variants of the disease that are still popping up on us, I suspect I tend to agree with General Manager Prum. I don't think that I think this is all going to be a moot point. I suspect that the governor is going to extend it anyways, and so that'll make it a lot easier for us. But in the event that he does not, I'm certainly open for continuing our policy as it is now, and then reevaluating it perhaps every third board meeting, which is approximately 45 days. And that doesn't mean we have to make a decision to change it, but it gives us a chance it keeps it top of mind for all the board members, and we can evaluate the current situation, every 45 days until we decide to make one decision or another more permanently. But I just think at this very moment, 2 weeks from now is the 30th. If the governor doesn't make, doesn't extend his current policy, then I think that we need to lead and do that for our community. So as we did before the governor did it at the beginning of COVID. And so that's my thoughts on that. And I know staff, we've given you two board members gave you one point of view of kind of a more flexible approach, and two board members gave you the view of let's go back. So Director Pinnock, you want to be the tiebreaker, or you want to stay out of this one?
No, I don't mind being a tiebreaker. And we have to vote on it. I actually, we talked about this a little bit in a committee meeting with public awareness. And I actually concur with Director Elitharp and Hernandez that the pre-COVID, we're such a friendly district that, we do work with people. We give them an out. And so to be fair to those ratepayers that are truly struggling, but are still paying. So we're trying to be fair, but we also we need to be fair to the ratepayers that are struggling and making their payments. And my understanding was it's just such a small amount that are affected, that aren't working with the district already. They're just not responding. We're reaching out to them. Hey, can we help? Can you reach out to us? Can you help us? And to be honest, the only way to get their attention would be to, sorry, your water is going to be shut off. And we give them plenty of time to let them know your water is going to be shut off in 10 days, 5 days, 3 days. Come in. They didn't do anything. Okay, we shut it off. They come back in, they make payment arrangement. It's turned on, the next day or the next hour. So I don't mean to be a tiebreaker there, but I tend to lean on that side, just like Director Hernandez. We've all been in tough circumstances and we make it work. And most of these people will make it work. And if they can't, and they're truly affected financially, I have full confidence that the district will work with them in really easy payment plans that'll just get them by. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Director Pinnock. Okay, General Manager Prum, do you have board direction?
Yeah, I can count to 3. So it sounds like starting October 1, we'll implement shutoffs when appropriate. Just to add to what Director Pinnock said, we do provide a final 48-hour notice. If once we've made the decision that they're going to be shut off, we don't just go out there and shut it off. We go out and physically post something at the site. So that's kind of their last notice, right? So then they have 48, basically 2 business days to get in touch with us, and before we do shut off the account. And we will err on the side of being very customer friendly. I don't know what that means. Every case is a little bit different, and our customer service folks deal with these kind of situations on a daily basis. So they've been able to really successfully arrange things for people to keep their water from being shut off. So.
Can someone please formulate a motion and put it on the floor and us take a roll call vote, please?
I would entertain a motion to resume our shut-off policy to the pre-COVID arrangement.
I'll second that, Penick.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Hernandez to resume our pre-COVID posture for water service shutoff moratoriums at the end of the state's policy expiration, and a second by Director Penick. And I'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Elthart,
Yes.
Director Penick,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
No.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
and I'll vote no as well. So motion passes 3-2. I would like to ask staff to, again, I can't stress enough, I'd be shocked if this is not a moot point and that we're going to be continuing under the state's current posture on this. But if for some reason we're not, and we do get to the point in 30 days from now, 45 days, I know it's going to take probably some time for it to work its way through. If there are shutoffs, can you bring it back? Can you just update the board at the appropriate meeting, just so we can kind of keep apprised of what's going on out there?
Yeah, we can do that. We'll certainly track the governor's progress of whether he extends it or not, and I'll keep the board informed of that. And if September 30th comes and he hasn't extended it, then I'll let the board know that. And then we will keep track of how many customers are in that category and how many like 48-hour notices that we're putting out there and how many have actually been turned off. So I'll work with finance and we'll put together some kind of a reporting form.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there's no other discussion on this item, any comments from the public?
No, sir.
Okay, moving right along, we're going to go on to item 2.4, and it's a discussion regarding the return to in-person public meetings.
Yeah, I'll take that one, President Sanella. So similar to the last item, due to COVID, the governor issued an executive order suspending certain provisions of the Brown Act governing the manner in which public meetings can be held. The executive orders allow public agencies to conduct meetings via teleconferencing. And since March 18th of 2020, Vallecitos has conducted all of our public meetings via the Zoom teleconferencing platform. The orders allowing this manner of meeting was scheduled to expire on September 30th. We have recently become aware that legislation has passed that will allow the continued use of teleconferencing for public meetings as long as a state of emergency is in effect. And I'm going to pause right now and maybe let General Counsel Gilpin to fill in any pertinent details about the recent legislation and what it may mean to the continued conduct of meetings via teleconferencing. So, Mr. Gilpin?
Yeah, I just clarify it, unless I missed some today, Jim Prum, it has not passed. The legislation has been adopted and is awaiting the governor's signature. If it is signed into law, it's AB 361, would allow agencies to continue to conduct virtual meetings as long as there's a state of emergency, either declared by the state or on a local level. One change it does make relative to the key difference between AB 361 and the executive order is something that won't affect you because you've been doing it anyway, but you have to allow public comments to be made in real time. Otherwise, in other words, you can't refuse to take public comments during the meeting because they haven't been submitted in writing before the meeting. You all have kind of been doing that anyway, so that shouldn't be a big effect. Again, I anticipate this will get signed or the current executive order will be extended. If it is extended, the question came up and the executive order is not extended. The only portion of the executive order that expires relates to the various provisions of it. The state of emergency remains in effect. So if this is signed and the executive order allowing these remote participations isn't extended, we would still be allowed to do this under AB 361, but we're waiting word that the governor has signed that bill.
And I'll clarify, I have no knowledge that he signed it. I probably misspoke. So it was passed to the governor's desk for signature. Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Gilpin. Okay, so the date and the timing aside, at some point we will be going back to in-person meetings, whenever that is. And I believe the goal for Vallecitos should be to try to incorporate the beneficial aspects of telecommuting or teleconferencing into our in-person meeting format. So in the Zoom environment, each participant has his or her own camera. So for example, each of the board members had their own camera, and the public was allowed to participate remotely. So we'd like to carry those features forward when we go back to a physical environment. But there are some technological issues that would prevent that and may impact that ability. So when we do go back to the boardroom, it would be my recommendation that we would rely on the fixed camera at the back of the room. So for all the board members, but in particular for the two new board members, there's a camera that's fixed at the back of the room that captures a wide angle view of all 5 board members. There's no close-ups or anything, but relying on that would eliminate some of the technological problems that we think may be incorporated if we try to bring individual webcams into the boardroom. So we would rely on that wide angle camera, and we would rely on the microphones that are in place in the boardroom for the audio capabilities. Over time, we can incorporate additional cameras, which will provide a better video experience for our viewers. Some of our board members may remember that when we approved the improvements for the boardroom, there were supposed to be 3 cameras on the back wall. And those were eliminated mostly for a cost consideration, but that was a pre-Zoom environment world. So it would be our recommendation that over time we would incorporate 2 additional cameras back there, and those cameras would be able to give better close-up views of the board members and maybe the public speakers as well. But that may take us some time. So the initial meetings would rely on the fixed camera in the back of the room, that wide angle perspective, no close-ups on the directors' faces. But we would also incorporate the public being able to come in via video conferencing. So we'd still be in a Zoom environment. Members of the public can be at home watching. They can provide public input just like they do in the Zoom environment now. But the board members and key staff members would be physically present in the board chambers when the board decides they're ready to do that. We are still working some issues with Cal OSHA in terms of, that's California Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They govern the workplace, right? So right now, for people governed by Cal OSHA, we would be required to wear masks if we were all in the same space together. And I think it would be in our best interest to have meetings in person without masks, but that's just your general manager's opinion. And depending on how you interpret the Cal OSHA extents of their reach, it may affect the board members too. So the board members may have to wear masks. So right now, my recommendation is that we continue utilizing the Zoom platform to conduct meetings as allowed by the law. So if the Brown Act provisions, exemptions aren't extended, or if they're not extended, we may be forced back in. But if they are allowed, if they do extend those and allow the continued use of video conferencing, my recommendation would be that we continue to do that. So with that, I'll throw it over to the board, and you can discuss and provide any direction that you'd like.
Okay, and just one quick point of clarification before I open it up. If nothing changes, if the executive order is not extended, then on October 6th, that first Wednesday of October, if there's no law change or extension, then we're going back in?
That's correct. And that's from a staff perspective, that's what we're anticipating. We're gearing up in the event that it's not extended. We're going to be ready for that first meeting, and not just board meetings. It would, I believe, and Mr. Gilpin could correct me if I'm wrong, but it would affect the committee meetings as well. So we're gearing up so that we are able to handle those meetings in person like we did in a pre-COVID environment. But I'm just like the last item with the bill pay, I'm pretty confident that the governor will probably sign this and it'll be extended. I don't know how long the state of emergency will continue to be in place, but I think it'll go beyond September 30th.
Glenn, just as a wrinkle that I'm not sure was mentioned, if the executive order is not extended and the statute is not signed, and you have to go back to the public, if you have to go back to the boardroom, you will not be allowed to exclude the public, absent extension of one of those.
Right.
So we'll contemplate dealing with the public coming in as well.
Yeah, so none of you have been in the boardroom for quite some time, but we've already taken out a lot of chairs. So we've got physical, social distancing, reduced number of chairs in there. We would have to require that the public wear masks. Staff would have to wear the masks. The board, we'd look for a general counsel direction on whether the board is governed by Cal OSHA, whether the board has to wear masks. So, and I think the governor doesn't want to have to force agencies into having meetings with everybody wearing masks, but I can't speak for the governor, so.
Right, Director Hernandez.
What is the legal position about the board having to wear masks?
Well, Director Hernandez, it's not entirely clear. One interpretation is that so that the nuance of wearing masks is an OSHA requirement, which applies to Vallecitos staff and would not include board members because you're, quote, not employees under the interpretation or for purposes of OSHA. Then you would apply to, you look at the CDC and local regulations, and if you haven't been vaccinated, then the recommendation is you're wearing a mask. If you have been, you're not required to. The wrinkle comes where you introduce staff into that environment, and if someone is unvaccinated, then everybody gets to wear a mask in light of that complication. So that's where that comes from.
Is there an exemption for the testing?
I don't believe so, Director Hernandez, but I look, I mean, you mean where you've got a recent test result showing that you're negative?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to confess, but I will look into that.
All right.
President Sanella, we do have a public speaker on this one.
Okay, we'll get to them here in just a second, but
Okay.
I did have one more question of staff. Has anybody, my understanding is that both San Marcos Unified School District and the city of San Marcos have returned to in-person meetings. Have we reached out to them for, what their plan was, how they've implemented it, and, any feedback from, lessons learned, any of that kind of stuff?
Not for the school district or the city, but I have reached out to surrounding water districts to see what they're doing. And kind of for those agencies that have resumed public meetings, they are limiting the number of people in the board chambers. So for example, most of the staff members are not in the board chambers. You may have the general manager, maybe the attorney, and the 5 board members. All the remaining staff are participating remotely via teleconferencing. They're using the Zoom platform. Some are not allowing members of the public into the board chambers because they feel they have access through the Zoom platform. Some are allowing the public. The ones that are allowing the public seem to be requiring masks by the public. But there doesn't seem to be any consistency on the requirement for masks by the elected officials.
Okay. Any other board comment before we hear from the speaker? I don't see any. Let's go ahead and hear from the speaker, and then we can come back to the board.
Okay, the speaker is Donna Nickel. So Ms. Nickel, go ahead.
Ms. Nickel?
It looks like her microphone is activated, but we can't hear you, Ms. Nickel. Now her microphone is off. Miss Martin has also expressed a desire to speak, so if you like, I can maybe mute Miss Nickel and go to Miss Martin and then try to come back to Miss Nickel in a minute.
Yes, please.
Okay. Go ahead, Miss Martin.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have been attending live in-person meetings for about 5 meetings now with this, San Marcos City Council. The council members are masked. They are socially distant. All of the public are masked and they are socially distant. And everything is working very well that way.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
I'll go back and try Miss Nickel one more time. Miss Nickel, can you hear us? Yeah, I don't know. I did. Her hand
Perhaps
still raised, but that's it.
Okay, if Ms. Nickel, if you can hear us and you're able to, you know, I'm not sure what the issue is, but if we can get your microphone to work so it will come through, we'll definitely hear what you have to say at any point during the meeting. If we're not able to resolve it before we conclude tonight, please feel free to either call or email Glenn Perum at the district and share your comments. And Glenn, if and when you receive those, if you could pass those on to the entire board, I'd appreciate it.
I will.
Okay, back to the board. Any other discussion on this before we move along?
Are we voting on this tonight? Are we taking a vote or?
We have to provide some direction to staff. I think that our hands could be tied if there's no change from the governor. There's no extension of the executive order. I think we have to go back into the board meetings. I think we'll be required by law to. However, what that looks like inside the board chambers, this sounds like there's some flexibility there. And so I think that, I guess the first question we probably should provide, the first direction we should provide staff is, if the executive order is extended, does the board want to go ahead and continue with the video conference meetings, or do we want to go back into the boardroom anyways, like some of like San Marcos Unified and City of San Marcos and others? And then if it's not extended, or if we go back into the room, back into the boardroom, either way, are we doing masks? Are we doing social distancing? Because that sounds like there's a lot of gray area in that part of it. And so I think those are the two pieces. And Glenn, if I'm missing something and you need something else from us, let me know. But I think that's kind of what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, I think you got it. Particularly if the state does extend the ability, we still have the choice that if we want to, we can come in. So that's the one piece I would like to know from the board. So if the state does extend the ability to do video conferencing, does our board want to continue to do video conferencing?
Okay.
That would be helpful to get that direction.
I think it would be appropriate, I think it would be appropriate to enable those of us who may not want to come in because we don't want to be in a room where, the following the guidelines is sort of squishy, to attend by Zoom. I think that would be appropriate if you have the capability to do that. And that would be, that would enable everyone to participate and be comfortable.
Is that an option, General Counsel, to do, where not all of the board members are present live? Or is it kind of an all or nothing, I guess is what I'm trying to clarify.
So let's focus on two scenarios. One is, I think what Glenn is asking is if the executive order and or the new statute are in effect, does the board want to go to the boardroom anyway? Under that circumstance, Some of you could go to the boardroom and some of you could continue to participate remotely. Under a scenario where the executive order is not extended and that new statute doesn't go into effect, we're back to the old Brown Act requirements, and you would all need to attend unless you wanted to participate remotely, which would then require you to go through the old Brown Act requirements that we have to post you have to post an agenda at your location. You have to leave the door open and allow that location to be accessible to the public in order for you to participate remotely. So those are kind of the two different options, but I think we're focused right now on the first scenario, where if the executive order is extended or the new statute goes into effect, you're not required to come back to the boardroom. You could participate remotely if you elected to, but others of you could go to the boardroom and participate.
Okay, thank you. Director Althorpe, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I agree with Director Boyd Hodgson. I'd like to see the ability to do it either or, attend in person or do Zoom, assuming that the executive order is extended. That's what the water authority's been doing the last few months, and it's worked out pretty well. So I would advocate for that.
Okay, thank you. Director Hernandez?
Yeah, I'm good with perhaps the general manager prior to our first board meeting in October could identify what the options are, and then we could make a personal decision. If we have to come in, we'll come in. If there's a either or, well, then I'll make a personal decision, as will potentially the other board members.
Okay. General Manager Broom, is that something, I mean, that sounds complicated to me. I think, I don't know. Is that something that staff could handle on such short notice?
I think it is. There's some technological issues, but I think we can work through them. The very top of our notice for our board meeting says one or more board members may participate via teleconference. So it's kind of been anticipated all along that we may go back to a world where it's kind of a hybrid amongst the board members. Now keep in mind, so our first board meeting in October is October 6th, but we have to publish the agenda the Friday before. And I don't know what date that is, but it's the very beginning of October, probably.
First, yeah.
Yeah, the first, yeah. So we have to know by then, because the way we say it is, are we going to say it's at the district offices or via teleconference or some kind of a hybrid, so the public knows what to expect? Minor detail, but I just want to make it clear that it's not just October 6th we're making a decision. Staff has to make a decision the week before as we publish the agenda. And we'll be working with IT to be able to, I'll make sure from our IT group that we can incorporate this kind of board hybrid approach with some in the boardroom and some not.
Okay, I can support the hybrid approach. And then each of the board members can make their own personal choice on that. As far as, going back at all, for me, it's all about being accessible to the public, and I'm eager to get back into the boardroom. But the reality of it is, even before COVID, we really didn't have a lot of participation of people coming to our board meetings. Usually it was an applicant that had an item on the agenda. But typically, if it was just somebody in the audience that just kind of showed up, that was usually how we found out that they were running for office. Otherwise, they just didn't come. And I feel like we've had more participation from the public via the Zoom. It's similar to voting by mail, right? The voter turnout has increased in the last couple of elections because people can do it from their home. And everybody has access. They don't have to worry about, driving to a location, etc. So I'm also open to, if we're allowed to continue doing the Zooms, but it sounds like the board majority is open to some sort of hybrid approach.
Yep.
Okay, and then if we can just clarify so the board knows, and maybe we don't have to clarify this tonight, but for those that are going to choose to come into the boardroom, what's that boardroom going to look like? Are there going to be masks? There's not going to be masks. Is it optional? Is it required? I think social distancing is pretty common sense and easy enough to do, but what is that environment going to look like?
And my recommendation would be that it's a fully masked environment. From a workplace perspective, right now, when we have employees, more than one in a workspace, everyone has to mask up regardless of vaccination status. If you're in your own office, like I'm in my own office right now, you don't have to wear a mask. But if I go out in the hallway, or if I go to a meeting room, or even the restroom, I have to put my mask on. So I think the same, in terms of protecting the people in the workplace, I would expect the same thing, that everybody in the workplace mask up, unless the Cal OSHA rules and the CDPH rules change over time. But right now, we're following the guidelines.
And the public would wear masks as well.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, that we require that the public, I don't believe the Cal OSHA requirements don't extend to the public. Just like if you go to a grocery store, you'll notice most of the workers are in masks, but a lot of the customers aren't. That's because the grocery store manager and owner is protecting their employees. So I don't think we can mandate that the public wear the masks. We can certainly suggest and make them available and hope that they do, but I don't know beyond that what we can do.
Glenn, maybe there's a nuance there that we haven't discussed that we should, is if we're under the ordinance, if we're under the executive orders in that hybrid world, you're not going to have to allow the public to come into the boardroom. So do you want to allow the public to access the boardroom in that hybrid situation?
Well, I can just chime in. I mean, the whole point of this is to give the public access to us. And if we're not going to allow them to come in, then I don't even think we should do the hybrid. We should just stick to the Zoom, because what's the point? I mean, I like all my colleagues. I would love to get to know you better and hang out with you in person, but is this the right time to be hanging out in person? If we're not going to allow the public into the building, then I don't need to be sitting next to Director Hernandez. Any other thoughts? Any other direction for staff?
Director Althar has his hand up.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Director Althar.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with you, President Snell. If we're not allowing the public in, I don't see much point about us meeting in person. It just kind of defeats the purpose. So I'm with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe I'll go back to my original recommendation to the board, is as long as the state allows it, let's continue to do Zoom meetings. But happy to do whatever the board would like.
Any other thoughts? I don't see anything. So it sounds like we're going to go with your original recommendation, Glenn, and I'm sure you're going to share with us as soon as we hear one way or the other if the executive order is not extended, and if it's not extended, then if you could communicate in writing so we can see it, what the plan is for October 6th meeting in person.
Will do.
So just so everyone understands, if we agendize it as a hybrid meeting on October 1st and you all decide not to attend, they're still going to have to open the boardroom for the public to attend. So
yeah, I thought we went back to, if we're not going to allow the public into the boardroom, then we're not going to have the hybrid. The only reason to have the hybrid is if you wanted to be accessible face to face with our constituents in the boardroom during a meeting. And if we're not going to offer that as an opportunity, then it seems to me that it would defeat the purpose. I understand there's some benefits of collaboration and just the board working together face to face, but I don't think that's not nearly as high of a priority as the accessibility of the public to us. And so, at least in my mind, and to take on the risk of either, getting or spreading COVID. And so while I could be convinced that allowing the public accessibility to us would be, from a risk benefit standpoint, there's probably more benefit in my head to do that. But if we're not going to open up the chambers to the public, then I just don't see why we need to be there.
Well, you all decided you wanted to do the hybrid, which means you're going to open the chambers, which based on your silence means the public is going to be allowed access to the chambers. And I'm suggesting that would be the case even if all 5 of you decide to stay home. So just for your consideration.
No, I understand. I thought we had moved on from that.
Yeah, let me summarize what I think I heard. Here's what I think I heard. If the state extends our ability to do teleconferencing, we're going to continue to do teleconferencing. In the October 6th meeting will be advertised just like it has been for the last year and a half. If the state does not extend it, we are forced into going into the boardroom, and then I will send out information. I will post the agenda and send out information to the board to let you know what to expect for an in-person meeting. Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in any case, if we're required to, or we do a hybrid, if we're going to open up the boardroom, I think we should open up to the public. And again, I want to reiterate, especially for the new board members, we very rarely got anybody that came to the meetings. I would love to have the room filled with people every meeting, but that's just simply not the case. And so it's not like if we do open it up to the public, it's not as if the place is going to be standing room only. It's not like a school board meeting or something like that. We may get 1 or 2 people come. And so, I think we'll be able to safely and responsibly social distance.
Are we ready to move on?
I think so. That direction seems as clear as mud to me, but if you got it, Glenn, then
it's clear in my mind.
Okay, good. Well, thank you everybody for the discussion. That concludes our action items. We're gonna, just for one last chance. Did we ever make contact with Miss Nickel?
No, and her hand is lowered now.
Okay.
So.
Okay, hopefully she reaches out, and if she does, Glenn, if you will.
Her hand just went back up. So.
Oh, let's give it a try real fast.
All right, Miss Nickel, can you hear me? I see her microphone. It looks like it should be live, but we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Miss Nickel. All right.
Well, hopefully Miss Nickel reaches out to the district, and then you'll share her comments with the entire board at that time.
Will do.
Yep. Okay, that concludes the end of the action items for tonight. We'll move on to the general manager report.
Yeah, just a couple items. So first, just want to let the board know, Vallecitos is a member of a North County Recycled Water Coalition. And we put this coalition together to work to ensure that recycled water is being produced and consumed wisely. And another reason we put it together is so that we can work together to secure outside funding for our projects from the state and federal government. And recently, this North County coalition group that we're a part of was awarded a grant of $6 million for recycled water projects. We put in a request for 14 million. We were awarded 6. Now we have to divvy that up again amongst our other 9 or 10 partners. We believe our share will be about $500,000. And our share of the money will be used for the expansion of our chlorine contact tanks at Meadowlark, which will provide for an increase in the amount of recycled water that we can produce at that facility. And I just want to say that James Gumpel is our representative on that group, and he's done a great job securing those funds for us. So thank you, James. I think he may have taken off already, but a nice job by him. Also want to let the board know about an innovative approach we're using for one of our maintenance activities. So one of the things that we do to ensure our water system pipelines are operating properly and delivering safe water and clean water is to flush the lines to remove any accumulated sediment in there. Now, historically, this has been done by opening up a fire hydrant and letting the water flow through the pipes to increase the velocity of water in the adjacent pipelines, which sweeps away any sediment in the line. Now, unfortunately, using this process, the water is wasted. The water that comes out of the fire hydrant was just it's dechlorinated, then put in a curb, and it goes into a storm drain somewhere. And because of recent concerns about the value of water, particularly given our drought conditions that we're heading into, we've elected to try a new process. So we've contracted with a company called NoDes, and they've developed an innovative closed loop filtration system that will isolate a water main and move high velocity water through it. It'll filter this water through basically a tank on a truck and return the water to the system in a closed loop fashion. So it's never exposed to the environment. It can't get contaminated, but allows us to get any accumulated sediment out of the line. So the sediment is then disposed of and no water is lost in the process. We're currently doing this work in the Lake San Marcos area. The contract is underway right now. And if this proves to be a success, we'll consider making this the standard process for flushing lines. Now, it's not cheap, but what price is the water that we're wasting, right? So that we're being put in a situation where the water is more important than the money for these maintenance activities. And depending on the economics of it, we may even look to purchase one of these units so that we don't have to rely on the availability of a contractor who right now has kind of a proprietary system. So I thought I just wanted to highlight that and let the board know. It's pretty innovative, and I think it'll be a great success. And it was really tough to explain to customers in the past why we were letting water come out of the fire hydrants and just go down the storm drain. And last thing I wanted to say is just to remind the board that we have our Twin Oaks solar dedication ceremony tomorrow. So please meet in the front parking lot at 8:30, and we'll escort or ferry people over to the site. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, President Sanella.
Thank you, General Manager Prum. District Legal Counsel report.
Just an item, as I indicated, we're still following two bills that have passed through the legislature that are pending. Hopefully, the governor's signature, AB 361, which we discussed relative to the Brown Act provisions being extended for virtual meetings. The second is SB 323, which would provide a change on the statute of limitations for claims related to challenges to water and sewer fees under Prop 218. As the last discussion illustrated, things are still pretty fluid relative to what's going to happen with these bills, what impact that's going to have on the meetings, not to mention the local regulations and OSHA movement on the COVID situation. So hopefully we'll have some clearer pictures as we move towards the deadline on execution of all these.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Director Elitharp, item 3.3, San Diego County Water Authority.
Yeah, I think Director Hernandez has a hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for catching that. Director Hernandez.
Yes, I was going to ask Jim Gilpin, do we have an update on Lake San Marcos, the continuing saga that's almost ready to go for the last half a dozen years?
You're talking about Lake San Marcos?
Yes.
The litigation over Lake San Marcos that you're out of?
Yeah.
Well, the latest as of today, there was a notice from the court that the other parties are still proceeding on their settlement discussions. That's the only update I'm aware of, since I'm not privy to their internal discussions there. But that was the latest that came out of the court, from the court notices today.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Director Elipart, San Diego County Water Authority.
Yeah, no report tonight. Next regularly scheduled board meeting is next Thursday, the 23rd.
Okay, moving on to the Encina Wastewater Authority. Have you, as a capital improvement committee, you guys met today, right, Jim?
Yes, we met this morning and we went through capital improvement projects. The big one was the digester improvement project construction award, a $16 million award over a 30-month time frame. And the uniqueness that was brought to my attention is that we're going to allocate the money with each new budget, although the overall 5-year capital budget has this money in it. Instead of allocating it all in 1 year, they're going to move it over a couple of years. So that was new. And this is the last capital committee that Mike Steineck will be at. He's going to be retiring here in 2 weeks. So I'm on the committee, the search committee, and we've just published the criteria. So it's out on the street until the end of the month. And if I hear anything, I'll let the board know. Thank you.
Super. And I was not able to attend the Policy and Finance Committee, so I don't have a report for that. And the next board meeting is on Wednesday. And so I'll have something to report on that at the next meeting. Any of the standing committees meet since the last time we were together?
Policy met.
Okay. I saw Director Ellithorpe stand first. You want to go ahead, Director Ellithorpe?
Yeah, the Engineering Equipment Committee met this past Monday, the 13th. We had 3 items for discussion. The first was a development construction agreement review. The second was a projects update related to developer projects. And the third was an item discussing the Metal Arc Reclamation Facility sodium hypochlorite conversion project design award. And that item will be coming to a future board meeting. That's all.
Thank you. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. Yes, the P3 committee met and we tackled a few different topics. It looks like we are moving forward with the internship program and we should have that on track to start in the spring. So I'm really excited about that. I think that that's going to be a wonderful addition. We chatted a little bit about the scholarship program, and that is moving along. Thank you to Director Hernandez for having that idea, and we are moving along with that. It remains to be seen exactly what will be allocated and to whom, but I know that that'll come before the full board before all of that is completely ferreted out. We talked about the lobby display. It looks like we might be able to do something with the old Jeep that's been kicking around for a little while. We might be moving that to the lobby and creating some kind of interactive educational museum-ish kind of display for the lobby in the boardroom. And I'm looking forward to pursuing that, hearing more about that. Let's see. We talked a little bit about the drought ordinance. I know that's coming to the full board, so I won't really belabor that. And we also chatted a bit about the CSDA board handbook template that we all now have access to. So that is something that I learned a little bit more about at the CSDA conference that I'm sure many of us will talk about during the next segment. But we now have access to that template for policies and ordinances. And I think that will really help as we move toward a more sort of organized and mentoring culture on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. And the Finance Committee has not met and as of today does not have a meeting scheduled for this month. Should that change, then we will provide an update at the next meeting. Did I miss anybody? No? Okay. Let's go on to director's reports on meetings, conferences, and seminars. I have not attended anything since the last time we were together a couple weeks ago. Has anybody attended something that they would like to report out on? Director Boyd Hudson.
Thank you. So as I just mentioned, I attended the California Special Districts Association conference. It was in Monterey, California. It was it was earlier this month. And it was a really interesting conference. I learned so much. And, I know that I believe we have met since then, but one of the things that I learned about is best practices that other districts are doing. And as we move forward with strategic planning and moving forward in that direction, I think that's a best practice that I'm really looking forward to us implementing. I think that that's going to be good for us as a board to have a strategic vision. I know that several board members have been asking to do that for a while, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that. Thank you.
Super, thank you. In fact, you just kind of jogged my memory, but I believe some of you were at that conference during the last meeting, and you called into the board meeting from there. And I think that's where we got a little bit of a kind of a sneak peek of what you guys were doing up there. So that's cool. Director Hernandez.
Yes, I also attended that conference in Monterey, and one of the interesting breakout sessions that I attended was buying and selling or leasing property. There was a change in the rules in 2020. Good news is we followed all the new rules, even though we had done this prior to that. So we're in good stead with everybody, and we're anticipating trying to put a meeting together this month to find out where we're at on that property. I also attended the Urban Water Institute, and for those new members of the board, projects move slow, sometimes even stop. But the Sites Reservoir, which on my first metropolitan tour, I visited 8 years ago, and they were talking about the Sites Reservoir up in Colusa County. And we actually met where the site was being developed, and a couple of ranchers rode up on their horses and asked us what the heck all 20 of us were doing standing around a bus. And we told them that, we're looking at the Sites Reservoir. Oh my goodness gracious. I'm surprised we weren't hogtied and drug across the prairie. Apparently things have changed. The process is moving forward. It's been approved, or it's in the near future will be approved. And so that central area will finally have some reservoir. That's the good news. The bad news is it's going to be 10, 15 years before it's actually a reservoir. But at least there's progress, and we can maybe hope that there'll be water for those poor devils in the future. One of the big issues that was brought up was there was a panel, and there was a farmer up there who in years past had farmed 10,000 acres. They're down to 3 now because of the water restrictions. And he's indicated that we're going to have to make a decision here, whether it's fish or food. And presently it's all fish. And so he's saying, based on the drought and the restrictions, prices of food are going to be up considerably next year. And there's not going to be many more years like this that we may have to buy Delta smelt because there's no vegetables for us to eat. So we'll see what happens there. That's my report.
Okay, thank you, Director Hernandez. Any other reports before we move on?
Yeah, just a report.
Yep.
And I mean, there's a lot of time and expense that goes into, I mean, what, 3, 4 of us went to this seminar, the one up in Monterey. And I don't know if this is the best forum. Is this what we just talk about? Because there's a lot of things that were learned. So is there another forum where we present those things learned, or is this it where we just report on them and say, that was great? Or how do we implement those things that we learn? I mean, where's the forum to do that?
Well, this is the forum to share where you went and what you learned. Of course, if there was ever an item that that you wanted to dive into deeper, there was a takeaway, Director Pinnock, that you wanted to agendize than a specific item, then that's where I think some board members in the past have come back with, they learned something about groundwater, for example. And we agendized the entire item and had a full, staff presentation on groundwater and a discussion on it. So this is kind of a catching the highlights and the overview of what you took away.
Okay, no, I'll do some highlights and takeaways, but I won't do all. I got all kinds of notes, but I'll just do two. One was, we have all these standing committees, and a lot of people said they don't use standing committees. It was one of the takeaways I took from this committee is just talking with people, multiple agencies, multiple people, not just water, but fire, even mosquito, and all kinds of agencies. But I like their idea. One of them said they use study sessions and advisory committees instead of standing committees. And I'd like us to maybe look at the opportunity of that, because we're all in these little standing committees, but it might be, some advisory committees. That's one takeaway. Another one I really liked was collaboration. A couple people shared the thought of how multiple agencies, they work together. For example, there was two water agencies, neighboring water agencies, we'll say like Vista and San Marcos, and they buy the same chemicals. We buy, I don't know how many gallons of chemicals a month. They buy so many gallons, but they pooled their buying power, and they saved, one was like $1 million in buying power just because multiple agencies collaborated and bought things together. I don't know the details of all that, but it was just interesting how we can collaborate with schools, other agencies, cell tower, we have a lot of land where you can do cell tower revenues, things like that. A couple things they said is, one, the public loves it because it saves money. And then two, you just collaborate and are able to do that. And I think I talked to Glenn a little bit about that. He says we do a little bit of that, and maybe it's something we can't do, but something I really took away. Talk about reserves, and we do have a large reserve policy, but how quickly they're eaten up. So it's good that we have large reserves because they can go really quickly. And I had a lot. One other quick thing though. They talked, as we just finished a debt, we borrowed a lot of money. A lot of times they said, instead of going into debt, why don't you get a large line of credit? And I don't know if we've discussed that at all, but a lot of agencies have been using lines of credit instead of debt, which was interesting to me. And without going on and on with the things I learned, one, it was great, but I would like to kind of delve into some of those and implement some of these things that we learned instead of just report on them and say, great, we just spent, thousands of dollars and we reported and then not make any changes. So enough said, but thank you. And thank you to the district for allowing me to go and be educated there.
Awesome, Director Pennick. I love it. And thank you for the highlights. And the very next item that, actually at the next one. So there's another conference coming up. Item 4.1, the Association of California Water Agencies Fall Conference is coming up. Looks like it's going to be November 30th through December 2nd. And there's an option for virtual or in-person attendance. So if anybody's interested, please reach out to Ann and let her know so she can make the appropriate arrangements. But item 5.1 is where, Director Pennick, if you ever did want to dive into something deeper, that's where you could agendize a future item. And so it sounds like you had a lot of really cool things to take away. I'm intrigued to learn a little bit more of the difference between a standing committee and an advisory committee. I don't know what the difference is off the top of my head because our standing committees are just advisory. So maybe there's a different, I wouldn't mind learning more about it because I'm intrigued. And so
I think they're more ad hoc instead of just continuous,
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah,
And
I know
sometimes they contain members of the public too. I think Director Pennick and I were in the same session, and that was also something that was brought in that I thought was particularly interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
that is interesting. So I'll go ahead and open it up. Item 5.1, is there any director's comments or future agenda items?
President Sinella?
Yes, please.
Just a point to Director Pennick. I learned about the scholarship program from a previous conference. I mentioned it to Glenn. He passed it along to policy and they're working on it. I'm happy to hear that. So, there's a way to get things accomplished. directly, indirectly, and of course, on this 5.1, that's another item, but yeah, by all means, there's ways to get the notice out.
Thank you.
Any other comments or agenda items at this time? I don't see any hands.
I do have a hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. No, I raised it right after you started talking. So I know that the city of San Marcos is going to be bringing forward an ordinance on single-use plastics. And as a water district, I feel like because microplastics and single-use plastics end up in our waterways, that we could do something to support that. And I would like to either work with staff or bring forward a resolution. You know, we don't make laws, obviously, regarding the city, but putting forward a resolution supporting sort of research on microplastics and research on plastics and how it ends up in our waterways. I would really like to do something like that. I'm not sure what the procedure would be, but I'm raising my hand saying I'm supportive of that. It's going to be brought before the city council. A lot of folks seem to support that. I don't know if it'll pass, but showing sort of solidarity in that way, and especially because we are a water district and there's so much plastic in our water, I think that would be something that I would like to work on. And so I'm throwing it out there. Maybe someone will collaborate with me. Maybe staff will work with me. I don't know, but I would like to, that's my comment. I would like to get guidance on how I could do that. And if anybody wants to work with me on that.
Okay, thank you. I saw a hand go up real fast. Director Hernandez, do you have something different, or are you going to comment on Director Boyd Hodgins?
Yes, Director, I'm happy to tell you that I was the one that got the plastic cups eliminated at the board dais. So
that is true. That is
it's
true.
a small step, but I'd be happy to work with you on putting together a policy or whatever, because I'm right with you on there's just too darn much plastic, and there's nothing wrong with a paper cup or a paper straw. So however you want to direct that, let Manager Prum know, and I'll be happy to show up with you.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
When we were, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago, we used to have really fancy red Solo cups as our cups for the dais, and Jim brought up that we shouldn't be drinking out of these single-use plastic cups, and I think we went to some sort of recycled paper cup, but yeah, I think it's a cool thing. I'm glad that the two of you guys are going to take two of the directors are going to take the lead on it, and we'll see where it goes and see how we can help. So
thank you.
Do you need anything else on that, Glenn, or?
No, I don't think so. I'll coordinate with Director Boyd Hodgson and Hernandez. Just so you know, Gail Martin's hand just went up, President Sanella, so I'll leave it up to you whether.
Please, let's recognize Ms. Martin.
Ms. Martin, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes. I just wanted to voice my dismay that you are going to end the water shutoff moratorium and that you are going to go back to old policies. We do have huge reserves, and they are huge reserves that got there because of the ratepayers. I think the very least that we can do is to extend the moratorium on shutoffs and at least review this January of next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other, thank you, Ms. Martin. Any other directors' comments or future agenda items? Okay, I don't see any. Then we are adjourned. Thank you to Ms. Nickel and Ms. Martin for joining us from the public, and thanks to all the staff members that put a bunch of time and work into the presentations and getting ready for tonight. And I will see my board colleagues, hopefully all of you, tomorrow morning for the ribbon cutting event. So it's been a pleasure. Have a good night.
Good night.
And you, good
Thank you,
night.
everyone.